My video for June the 26th, 2019 is video number 3128. The title is John Panella and the Divine Secret Garden. Yes, I did mention this in my previous video, and yesterday I listened to the entire book 4 in the series of 8. He continues to insist that everything in this 3D construct is just an illusion. Everything, he says, is a deceptive and altered creation from that which was made by the loving God. I agree with a lot of what he says, although it makes me sad to realize that the loving God would allow this to happen at all. I'm glad I did not wait until I finished book 1 or take the time to listen to book 3. Even though he began with book 4, or he began book 4 with a warning not to listen to that unless the other 3 had been read. Again, I do not read, I listen. I agree with him that most of the Old Testament is fiction, and that even the New Testament is mixed with lies. The King James Version of the Bible was compiled and edited by entities protecting a dark agenda. It's all about polarity, he says, which makes sense to me. The awful polarization of humanity is done to keep us on a never-ending cycle of reincarnation and perpetual war. Round and round we go and never get to experience heaven as our true Creator intended. He does say that the experiment is finally reaching a climax. I hope so. Yes, I was quite discouraged after reading book 2, which my friend said start with that one, not book 1, but I've read half of book 1, and I decided to go ahead and read book 4 after a conversation with a friend. And a lot of things that I read there, I thought, I've read this before. And I know I had looked at these things some time ago and thought I had them in my book collection, but obviously I did not. In any case, one of the things that he points out that I've heard before and recollected having been exposed to the idea before, that most of the story of Jesus, or what we've come to know as Yeshua or Jesus, actually did not take place in what is modern day Israel, or that part of the Middle East at the eastern side of the Mediterranean Sea. On the contrary, it actually took place in Turkey. And Istanbul was the Rome, or the city of 7 hills, where Jesus was crucified. And he went to lengths to point out some of the similarities that fit with Istanbul being the location where this all took place, namely, in this case, Western Turkey. But the whole Pauline epistles was basically in Greece and Asia Minor, in what we call today Turkey. Those were the 7 churches, etc. And he went to some lengths to show that Paul was not an eyewitness of the things that he wrote about. And he was quite arrogant in that he didn't even want to listen to the story of the people that actually were eyewitnesses. And the people that wrote the New Testament were not those, with a couple of exceptions, were not those that were actually there. And he suggests that when the authorized version of the Bible was put together, those that put it together had an agenda. And it wasn't put together and written. Nothing of that was even written till much later. And they did find some ancient manuscripts, but they eliminated and didn't use those in the New Testament, because again, he says there was an agenda. Well, I can understand how that premise could be put forth, because obviously when I look at the Bible with an objective mind and get rid of the idea that it's the inspired word of God, and look at it with a critical uh, a critical eye in that I'm trying to determine the truth, not just swallow a pill that somebody else tells me I'm supposed to take. Well, I don't, if you know me, you would know that I don't do pills, especially not pharmaceutical pills. I do vitamins and supplements, but not pills. So I don't like to swallow people's pills, although I did swallow what I was taught most of my life. That is, believing that the Bible was the Word of God and the King James Version was the right one. But King James, of course, was when he brought together the people to compile it, they left out various books that are even named in the Bible. He left them completely out of the record and went on to compile 66 books in the authorized version. Why was it authorized? It was authorized because it had been edited, because there was an agenda. And these are the things that we need to consider when we look at things like this. Now, I'm not trying to bust anybody's bubble or break anybody's faith, but it's interesting that he again makes the point that this world, it lies in the seat of the wicked one, which even Jesus said, this is not God's world. It is a miscreation that has the people that operate it have an agenda, and the agenda is a dark agenda. The agenda is one to keep us at war with each other and to keep us basically enslaved. And the money system, of course, as I've said so many times, is a part of that enslavement. I've told that story. I'm not going to repeat it again here. But for people that have grown up, as I did, reading the Bible and believing it's the Word of God, these revelations can be very disturbing, to say the least. And yet, it has a ring of truth. Again, Jesus did not exist in what we call today Israel or Palestine. Did not exist there. It makes a lot of sense that Turkey was the actual location where this took place. And the fact that the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, etc., are all in that area, not down in Galilee or anything like that. And he even points out that the Sea of Galilee is something that was put in, and he suggests a sea in another salt sea in Turkey that is more than likely that which was spoken of in the New Testament. They took things that were written at the time when Jesus was on earth, but they altered them greatly to fit a narrative that they wanted to put forth. And it's a narrative, as I keep on saying, and as I'm discovering, to keep us enslaved. It's not to tell us the truth. It's to create a fictional story that gives them control, that they can manipulate and keep humanity from exploring and from discovering a higher truth. And the higher truth is that the Creator didn't want to have anything to do with the world that had been created by the dark forces. I still don't understand why the dark forces were allowed to even exist in the first place, but that's another point. And I'm still wrestling with that, and I'm not at peace with the idea that would have been allowed at all. But as I said at the end of the blurb, I do hope, and he does say that there was a time limit set on this experiment, and we're near the end of that time, and the United States and the British Israels, which are the true Manasseh and Ephraim, are going to be paying a high price for the crimes that they've committed against humanity in the 19th, 20th, now 21st century. So thanks for listening. Namaste.